So give me your best guess for the next couple of months on what happens with KOC, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and Brian Flores. Where do they go? And if they stay, how much money do they get to stay?
Well, all right, let's start with Brian Flores because that's the most immediate one here. Flo's got interviews. He's interviewing with the Jaguars tomorrow. He's supposed to talk with the Jets and the Bears. At last check, those were not yet set up, but I imagine they're all happening in the next few days here. Once you're out of the playoffs, it's no longer like, hey, you got this 24, 48-hour window. It's just whenever you can come in. You're still only allowed to do virtual, which is a new thing within the past couple of years where now, even though you're out of the playoffs, you still have to be on Zoom, which is kind of,
Hmm.
illogical, but it's related to them trying to slow down the process to better promote equity, even though it's Brian Flores that's the one who's not being able to interview in person here. The NFL wants to slow down these processes as much as possible. In terms of where he potentially could go, as far as I know, he's in play in all three places, but he has not yet interviewed in any of those places. And as we've talked about many times, there's a lot of questions that Flo's going to have to answer that don't have to or do not pertain to how brilliant he is as a tactician, how good of a coach he is. I know the Flo has taken proactive steps this year to foster better relationships with players and having Thursday fellowship events and bringing guys together. He's definitely he's taken some of those cues and he's answered them, but he's got to go and talk with these various teams. So TBD on that right now. I wouldn't say he's the front runner for any job, but that's largely because he hasn't even talked to anybody just yet. In terms of Kevin and Kwesi, you're talking about a team that's made the playoffs twice in 3 seasons. They won 14 games this year, even though they didn't have a rookie start a single game, and their first round draft pick missed the entire season because of injury. So I think that Kevin's established himself. If he's not the coach of the year, he's certainly one of the top young coaches in the game. The question is going to be, 3 years. He's not won a playoff game. He's had two really good, entertaining seasons in which I would say they played above the level of the personnel, at a lot of times. But, the top level coaches right now are all making 14 plus $1 million a year. And there's about a handful, five or six, that are making 17 plus. So are the Vikings going into that territory with the Andy Reids and Mike Tomlins and Sean McVay, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh? Are they going into that stratosphere? Or is it, can you get a deal done for less than that? The leverage for Kevin O'Connell is I've got two really good seasons. My contract's up in a year. If we don't get this deal done, just like with players who are looking at free agency, there's no franchise tag for coaches. And so if they don't come to him with a top shelf type of a deal, he can coach it out and then see where things are next year. So that's to be determined. Those are conversations that are going to happen in the coming weeks and months. I don't anticipate there's anything to this idea of them trading Kevin O'Connell. Teams generally aren't in the business of trading away really good young coaches. There's not a lot of reason for it. And Kwesi and Kevin have been tied, obviously from the start here. So I would think that there's going to be a lot of discussions with the Wilfs and the usual end of season meetings that they do here. The logic would tell you that both these guys are going to end up getting extended, but with O'Connell in particular, it's going to be pricey. And you have to ask yourself if they come to him and, I'm throwing out a number here. Let's say they come to him at $10 million a year, which would still be in the upper half of the league, but it would not be in those that upper tier of coaches. Does Kevin take that money, lock it in, and figure I'm going to go win the Super Bowl next year, and then they're going to redo my contract anyway? Or do you go, you know what? I'm going to coach this thing out. That can bring a lot of stress and pressure on himself, on the staff, and everybody else. But those are some of the moving parts here. One way or another, I would be shocked if Kevin O'Connell is not the Vikings coach in 2025.